Good afternoon and welcome to Thursday's A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Chris McElwain and I'm joined today by, we did try but we couldn't get the King of Kings, so we got the next best thing, which is a Lord of King Tuts and JP Mason. Welcome, mate. And of course we've got the Tartan Samurai himself, Liam Carrigan. It's good to see you both. It's been a while since I've been on with you, JP, and Liam, it's always a pleasure being on with you. We're doing a lot of work on the blogs and the website, which is going great. It's Derby week, so we're on the countdown now to the big game on Sunday against our rivals. It's a good opportunity to look forward to what we can expect and what we hope for in that game. But hopefully we'll get the chance to look back on some of the other performances we've had against our old rivals, old and new rivals, and certainly talk about some of the players who maybe played a part in that, which will link into some of the events we've got in Acsom. But first things first, JP, it's been a while, and we were just talking before we started there that it's been a while since you've been at Paradise, but you were there at the weekend. How did you find it being back?
Really good. I just think there was that kind of, I think everybody that goes to the games, certainly the home games, will attest to the fact that it maybe got a little bit kind of like, oh, here we go again, because it was just that relentless the way the fixture pile-up was over the course of, December, January, February. And I think I said before here that if it was like that for us as fans, then what the hell was it like for players, and you actually think about the mental, I know people will throw they're paid well enough and all the rest of it, but the mental kind of drain that must have on them to be like, right, we've got another game in like 3 days' time, and here we go again. It's that pressure again, and pressure to deliver, pressure to perform. So I think that the break and a week off could really galvanise the squad and the team in particular to play better. And I think we dealt with Hibs as easily as we could, as handily as we could. There'll maybe be some bumps and bumps from them that they could have taken us to extra time or whatever, but I think we were always quite safe in the game, and it's really enjoyable being back at Celtic Park in the sunshine. And I don't know, when you've not had something for a wee while, you appreciate it again when it comes back. So I felt like there was an appreciation of being at the game rather than just being like, get up, get on a bus, go to the game, come home. I think there was a bit of that, and I hope that doesn't sound like you don't appreciate it when it's like that. It's just like, it's like anything. If you go to gigs all the time, you're going to get sick of going to gigs. I mean, I patched a gig last night that I might have gone to otherwise because I'd been to 3 in the previous few days, and I was just like, nah, I can't be bothered. So all eyes on Celtic Park on Sunday, and I'm sure everybody will be well up for that one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just, as always, I'm looking at the jersey just behind you there. It looks like a nice retro one. What's that? What's the year on that one?
93. That was the top we were wearing the first time I saw a Celtic Rangers game, which is actually the corresponding fixture. It was March. Oh, forgive me, I can't remember the exact date, but it was March 93, and I squeezed into would have been in the Celtic end, I think. In the old Celtic Park to watch Celtic win 2-1 with goals from Andy Payton and John Collins, with a reply from Mark Haitley about 12 minutes to go.
I think I remember that, actually, yeah.
I mean, I don't think it actually meant anything in the grand scheme of things, as quite a lot of those games did at that time, but just to see us win in the flesh, and Andy Payton ended up with a headwind, if I remember rightly, and he had like chalk from the pitch all over his face and his top.
That's right, yeah.
So it was, kind of did a reverse Goff for that, and we won. So I managed to pick up that top. That isn't my original. I had that top when I was a wee guy with Peoples on it.
Yeah.
But I gave it away to a wee cousin, and it's long. I mean, it would have been tiny on me now anyway, but it's good to have the adult version.
It's like my original centenary top. Yeah, I was only a little guy when I had it, and I wish I still had it. I've no idea what we did with it. Again, probably went to a cousin or something. Back in the day. So all you can get now is replicas. But yeah, no, that's a good one. And Liam, speaking of tops, you're sporting a particularly interesting one today. But I do want to pass on some feedback which was just sent to me by a regular Acsomer, Martin Davey, who said that he's really enjoying the work you're doing on the blogs. And actually, we're getting a lot of good feedback on the blogs, which are churning out at a rate of knots just now. how are you finding getting back into the blogging game? And there's no lack of topics to be covering at the moment, is there?
No, it's one of those things. The more I do it, the more I'm enjoying it, and the more I'm getting comfortable with the idea of doing a lot more of it. It's going to wee bit of a inside baseball, as they say here. From next week, it's going to ramp up quite heavily because next Thursday is my last day at my old job, and once I'm clear of that, it's going to be blogs all the way. So get ready for some some extreme gloating, assuming that we win on Sunday, because I've got a few ideas on some things I'm going to pull the trigger on next week, assuming we get a result.
Well, absolutely. I mean, that could definitely change the flavour of it depending on what happens. Well, let's talk about that then. So, lots of different points to discuss in terms of the lineup and how we want to approach the game. One of the key areas at the moment has been our front three, and I think it's clear to see, depending on whether we go with Maeda or Reid up front, but what we have there is we've got three, at least potentially four players who have got a combination of creativity, pace, invention, and as we've seen already this season, they've got a lot of goals in there. I mean, Liam, if they click on the day, we could run riot. I mean, we could be talking about another demolition derby potentially, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, I said 3-1 on Tuesday's show, but it's one of them as we get closer to the game and I'm reading more and more of the, shall we say, bovine excrement that's being churned out by the media, I'm getting more confident. So I then thought, you know what, I'm going to revise it up to 5-1. But then I thought, you know what? No, Big Casper's going to save the penalty. It'll be 5-0.
I like it. I absolutely love it. And GP, I mean, one of the things we've got to look at this game, we've got the away fans back in, albeit in relatively low numbers. I mean, you're obviously a regular attendee at Celtic Park. Is it something you're in favour of, having the away fans back? Do you think it adds to the atmosphere? And any concerns about how the authorities will deal with any potential trouble or flashpoints, anything like that? I mean, how are you feeling about having the away fans back?
I mean, it'll definitely be a bit odd looking over and seeing the usual sights that you see in the distance. But I think the Hibs game at the weekend definitely whetted the appetite for that. And you're thinking, right, Hibs are bringing 7,000 fans to Celtic Park. That's a really good thing. I've never ever been against an opposition team not filling their allocation. I mean, half the time the away supporters look like they've come on a skateboard because it's just that wee strip and that's it. And I don't know if that's just because of the lack of hope that they have. I don't know if it is that. I mean, as a football fan, I'd want to be wherever Celtic are playing, regardless of the challenge that faces us. If I could have afforded it, I would have been in Munich. I would have been in Dortmund. I would have been everywhere. Regardless of the fact that we were heavy underdogs, you just want to go and experience that, and obviously you're constantly chasing that thrill of the point or the 3 points in the Champions League. I would hope that it would be the same for diehard fans of opposition teams, where they're chasing that elusive victory that does come along every now and then. We saw it last season with the Hearts game when they beat us 2-0 at Celtic Park, which was a really, really low point. But I would hope that this is the beginning of because it does seem to be the noises that you hear, even from the staunchest of staunch, they do kind of want that return to full allocation. I think there's no question there is an appetite for that from the fans anyway, because it means that they get to come to our ground in numbers and we get to go to their ground in numbers. I've not been to Ibrox since the Odsonne Edouard finish into the
straw that broke the camel's back. A lot of people say.
Yeah, I've not been there. That's now 7 years, which is kind of wild when you think about it out loud. But it's just the way that it's sort of crumbled, I suppose, since then. There you go. The fear factor over any bother happening. I see obviously the picture's been widely shared with the netting that's been put up. I think that's probably a good thing, because maybe there would be a thinking within their support that there's only 2,500 of them, so they need to defend themselves, no surrender and all the rest of it. So cups of whatever would be getting thrown. I would hope that netting would deter that. I would hope the netting would just deter people from behaving like that, because I certainly wouldn't want to see our fans doing that at their ground and vice versa. Things getting chucked in the pitch, seen at Ibrox many times. Coins and batteries and mobile phones and things being picked up. And yes, I know a weed grinder was thrown at James Tavernier. I'm not going to skip over that. I don't think anything should be thrown at football players. It's just absolutely, or football fans for that matter. The glass bottle, the physio being injured at Ibrox, Joe Hart having glass in his box. All these things shouldn't be happening at a football game. You leave the players to fight it out amongst themselves. There's no point in us getting into bother with that. So exactly the same way from our fans towards theirs on Sunday. I hope that it's a fair fight. But we'll see if that happens or not. But no, I want to go back to Ibrox as a supporter and hopefully enjoy a victory over them again there, because it's a great feeling to win your opposition's ground, and I hope that's not what they're feeling on Sunday. I'm of the thinking that depending on how this result goes for them tonight, even Jose Mourinho referenced the fact that he was at a Rangers Celtic game at Ibrox, and it was a game that we won. It was Beach Ball Sunday.
Yes,
so you know what a European run can do for your home form, and it can keep you alive. And I certainly wouldn't be thinking of wild scorelines. I'd love them, but I if they're to get through tonight, then they're coming on Sunday with that in their sails. Do you know what I mean? I don't think that can be discounted, despite the fact that they've got, basically a wee guy in charge of their team. So
yeah. No, I think you make a good point. And when we think about the impact of this game, and look, we will never take anything for granted. I think we respect every opposition to an extent, and that includes our rivals. But when you look at everything that's been reported, and Liam, you've spoken about this quite extensively. We've got the talk of takeovers, we've got the Europa League exploits from Rangers, and look, credit where it's due for that, and it's benefiting the coefficient. Great, good on you. That's about as much credit as I'm given. But for me, there's a lot of tracing paper being plastered over cracks. So I still see this as our rivals as being a club that are very much hurting. They're still in very, very much a bit of distress. You just look at the front reaction to every little thing. We'll never really have a better opportunity, as the tagline says, to turn the screw as it was and really exacerbate the situation. I mean, we could be looking, as we said, at this could be Demolition Derby 2025. There is an opportunity here to go and assert a bit of dominance. I think we've got that in amongst us. But at the same time, as JP says, you don't want to go in overly cocky, overly arrogant, or seemingly overly arrogant about this, because over the course of 90 minutes, anything can happen. But on our day, on our game, and given the difference at the moment, you'd say, in terms of quality, there is an opportunity for us at home in front of our fans to go and make a real statement on Sunday, isn't there?
Yeah, I think so. And I think that the important thing is that even if we only win by a couple, I still want to see us dominant. I want to see us control the game. Like we did at Hibs last week, right? With Hibs last week, it was only 2-0, but could easily been a whole lot more, and we were never really in trouble. I want us to beat them well, but I would be quite happy with 1 or 2-0 if we were totally in charge of it and bossed it. And the thing is, with the whole issue with the fans, I would have concerns, because I think if we do absolutely scud them at the weekend, they are going to find some excuse to not meet their end of the bargain when we go to Ibrox again.
Yeah,
that would worry me. And the other thing that would worry me, and I'm going back a bit here, but back in the sort of early to mid 2000s, my dad and I were working at Celtic Park every match day, and it was we discussed it with senior people at the club, and they told us off the record. I don't know if this is still the case now, but back then, when they were dealing with the old Rangers and it was full allocations, there was a nominal agreement in place that basically after every game, If Rangers came to us, they would write a cheque for 10 grand and give it to Celtic. And when we went to Ibrox, we would write a cheque for 10 grand and give it to them. But no money actually changed hands. It was just like, we know your lot are going to smash up the toilets whenever when they come here. And we know that your lot are going to smash up our toilets when they come to us. So it was just kind of, it was a gentleman's agreement that we know that there's nutters on both sides and it's going to kick off and things are going to get broken.
That's fair.
But if that happens this week, what guarantees do we have they're going to pay the bill? I mean, they've just done what share issue number 1690 of the season, and they're still no further forward. It's like I would not trust them to pay the milkman, let alone pay for stadium damage. So
or the face painter for that matter.
No, or the face painter. But no, seriously, I do hope that we have some contractual obligation signed off there, because I really would worry about appropriate compensation for damage and reciprocal tickets. Because if we do win, I could just see them taking the huff and saying, no, we're not doing that. That didn't happen,
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the level of impact that could happen. All right, I think that makes sense. Let's talk then about how we approach the match. So we've spoken a little bit about the front line. JP, a lot of one of the key questions that I think is close to being answered this season is, who is Brendan Rodgers' number 9? I think based on a lot of the comments from the fans, including those on the Acsom community, a lot of fellow contributors as well. Maeda seems to be cementing his place as the number 9, with Ida coming in as the kind of plan B or the substitute striker. Do you think that will continue at the weekend? Do you think he'll go with Adam Ida up front, or with Dyson Maeda up front and bring Ida on, or do you think he might mix it up and go with Ida to, have the opportunity to maybe utilise Jota or Maeda later on?
I think he'll go Maeda. I think the team that he put out against Hibs had to be the strongest. Said that last week. There's no question that was going to be his strongest 11 that played in that game, to pay them the respect of the run that they were on, which obviously also included a game in which we rightly should have scored an equaliser against them at Easter Road, which it's not really been that much made about the fact that the Willie Collum VAR show, because I said at the time, looking forward to seeing what he says, and he's basically held his hands up and said that there's no way that goal should have been disallowed. So Brendan Rodgers was right at the time. All the Celtic fans that were up in arms at the time were right. Hibs fans that were going off on one about it were wrong, as much as they thought they had the moral high ground at the time, which was really annoying to me. I don't know why. It really got me at that time. I was just like, have a bit of dignity with your victory. At least acknowledge that you've won with a little bit of fortune, rather than trying to rub our faces in it or take the mickey out of Brendan Rodgers for being annoyed at the fact that something so wrong had been happened against us. So anyway, I'll get off the high horse about that. But the front three I can't imagine he would change it from last week, because as I said last week, there was obviously a bit of clamour for Yang. And everyone praising Yang for his contribution against St Mirren, rightly so. But I don't think anybody really, if you put the lie detector test and the sort of classic police interrogation lamp in their face, and was asked, do you think Yang should start against Hibs and subsequently against Rangers? No one would have said yes. They would all be like, okay, he's played really well. He's shown that he can contribute off the bench, which is something that he couldn't do previously. But there's no way that he'd be starting in those games. So by that reckoning, the strongest lineup was against Hibs. The strongest lineup will be against them, and it just makes the bench more powerful. The question I would say is the midfield. I don't know who he plays in midfield. The automatic thing would be to say McGregor, Hatate, and Engels, but that might not be available to him. So
yeah. Well, Kevin Big Yogi did say on yesterday's show, he said the used the old cliche that the game will be won and lost in midfield. So, let's look at that. I mean, we've got decent options, albeit I think Bernardo is still out injured, so obviously he's down for the game. But Liam, when you look at the midfield, and it was interesting. A few people said yesterday, which I think is a good point. If you assume the number one choice or the first choice midfield three is Callum McGregor, Rio Hatate, and Arnie Engels at the moment on form, and that's not to denigrate the contributions of McCowan coming in, who I think's been impressive. Bernardo, when he's fit, has been really good, but a lot of people were pointing to Rio Hatate, saying he could be the key man in that midfield. Would you agree with that? And obviously, you've got the knowledge of the player, but all three will need to be on their game. But there seems to be a lot of pressure on Rio Hatate, not just to be part of the midfield three, but to be the real creative force in that midfield.
I think the issue with Rio Hatate is that there's been this sort of lingering doubt about his long-term future at Celtic for the last couple of months. You ask most people, who do you think's most likely to be off in the summer? Most of them say Hatate. His form has been up and down, but when he's good, he's really good. And I think, if you know, I might have sounded a bit arrogant earlier on when I'm going on about 5-0 and whatever. There was a wee bit of jesting in there, but I do genuinely think if we play well, we should win this game by a few goals. And a large part of that is going to be dependent on Hatate. If Hatate turns up, we control that midfield and we win well. Also, talking about, who's going to be fit, whatever, just remember that if you were reading the blog this week, that's on the Derby Week bingo card. And a random injury scare that turns out to be completely nonsensical. That's one for the bingo card.
By the way, see on Hatate, he owes us one, because I was obviously 3 sheets to the wind in Belfast watching that game in January, right? And I'd gone over there. Scott McCorry of the Homeboys had invited me over to watch the game in a bar in the Falls Road, and met up with Marty Quinn, who's also of that podcast. If you've ever listened to it, it's very good. They don't do it for press access or likes or anything like that. They're just a bunch of guys from different parts of Scotland and Ireland who get together and just get smashed on audio. It's not visual or anything like that. It kept me going during lockdown. I listened to it mostly. I think that was one of the main podcasts I listened to along with this. So yeah, I'm still hurting from that. And Hatate, I thought that day was, I don't know what his ratings were, but it was horrendous. Like, I mean, I know the team and the team by and large were horrendous, and none of us saw that coming. And I bet if you look back to the prediction podcast leading up to that game, there was 5-0s, there was, all the rest of it, because why wouldn't we have thought that we would have gone there and rolled them over because of the nick that they were in and the strength that we had. Didn't really have any injuries, I don't remember at that time. Pretty full strength squad to deal with. But as you said, anything can happen in a 90-minute game of football. But I think Rio Hatate, he's key. He's absolutely key. Liam's the first person I remember ever even mentioning Rio Hatate before he signed, because he was asked about other players that may or may not sort of, if we were going to continue the scouting and the recruitment from that part of the world, who else could we possibly get? And I remember Rio Hatate. Maeda was also mentioned as well. Be interested to know if there's anybody else playing it in the league currently that would pop up on our radar. Is there, Liam? Just interested.
Well, we're only 2 weeks into the current league season, so give me a bit of time to get back to you on that one.
Yeah, there's not an obvious sort of standout player even from like last season or anything that you are
not especially, no, because the last season kind of how do I put this? Vissel Kobe won the League and Cup double and kind of scooshed the league, and the combination of players there are either players who have been to Europe and already done it, or players who didn't quite make it in Europe and are back there now. Yosuke Deguchi being one of them. I saw him absolutely boss it in the midfield in the cup final when I went down to Tokyo to watch it. And great to see a former Celtic man lifting a trophy with another club. That's a nice experience. I know that people are divided on how they feel about ex-players when they go elsewhere, whatever. Do they really care, whatever? But once a Celt, always a Celt, in my opinion. And good to see Gucci lifting a trophy.
That's pretty cool.
Absolutely.
Pretty cool. I mean, so basically what you're saying is that we won the equivalent of football lottery by signing.
I was going to say.
I said that day that I had a feeling that he was going to become. I had no real idea of what he was capable of, but that day that he signed, I tweeted and just said, "Bookmark this, potentially the best January signing ever." I just had a feeling that it was going to. I don't know if it was based on stuff that you'd said, a combination of that and maybe the bits and bobs that I'd read about him, but I'd certainly not watched a lot of him. I probably wasn't as aware that he was a international regular. But what he's done at Celtic is, I love the fact that he's turned loads of people around who previously were, I mean, folk calling him a competition winner in the comments, even within the last 6 months on here.
That's right. I remember those comments. Yeah.
And I was absolutely astonished that somebody would want to go in hard on somebody who has contributed so much and is contributing so much to this team, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Good points made. Let's jump into the comments just now, see if we can get some general feeling about how people are viewing the game coming up. So we'll start with James Kirwan first in. And James Kirwan's actually the uncle of Paddy Sinnott, who's a regular Acsom member. So welcome back to the channel, James. Always good to hear from you. Uncle Jim, as he's referred to by Paddy. The unstoppable trio of Jota, Maeda and Kuhn will give the back four headaches all day. Our midfield will dominate, adding to the agony of a fantastic demolition of the Rangers. Would love to see a 6-0 win. Oh, I'd take that, James, all day long. I think James will just refer to you as Uncle Jim now. Acsom's Uncle Jim. Would probably think quite well. Joe Hamilton, welcome to the channel. This is Jota's game. Yeah, there's been some discussion about Jota, guys. Obviously, came back to the club. Great start. The kind of dream, romanticism around his returning re-debut, if you call it, coming in, scoring, the tears on the pitch. I've got to admit, I got a little bit emotional when I was covering the game myself for Acsom. It's fair to say that he's taking his time getting up to fitness and getting up to speed, but you're seeing fleeting moments of skill and ability, beating players, doing things that we didn't really see from Palma, that we didn't see in the early part of Yang's career, really demonstrating what we missed when he left in the first instance. How key is he going to be in the game on Sunday? Is it too early to expect miracles from him, which one of the other commenters has mentioned, or is it the kind of game where you're looking for a player like Jota to take it by the scruff of the neck? I mean, what do you think, JP?
I mean, the fact is that when you've given yourself those moments like he has, like that, the run onto the pass and then the dink into the Lisbon Lions stand against them, when you've done that sort of thing, it surely just gives you the belief in yourself that you can do it again. You can do similar things again. You also know what the feeling's like, so you'll be chasing that. It's almost like, surely it's probably like a drug where you want that high again, and you've got the tools with your feet to do that. It's nobody else is going to lay that on a plate for you. You've got to put in the work. So, and he did say that, and he kind of referred to that in the interviews. I've just seen clips of the interviews that he's done this week where he talks about the special feeling and everything else. And I mean, I can only imagine if I was a player and was able to do that, and you'd had a taste of it, you want to do it. And you also are aware that these opportunities don't come along that often. As much as we might say we play each other too many times, it's still a short window of time to do something against them. You've got 90 minutes on Sunday to do something, and then the game's gone. It's a bit of a strange situation that we're so far ahead of them, and I think that psychology maybe played into the January game a little bit. I don't know if that was a thing, but we're even further ahead of them now than we were then. So
that's true. I mean, it was really inconsequential. I know no loss to them is inconsequential when you're a Celtic fan, but in the grand scheme of things, it didn't really damage your season at all.
That made my day out in Belfast, I'll tell you that.
Well, yeah, fair enough.
But no, I know what you mean. It's one of those where it was maybe playing into their minds a bit. I don't know if that is a thing that you can stop or quell in any way if there are those doubts, or not doubts, if there are those thoughts in a player's mind when they go out into the pitch that maybe I only need to give 70% today, and then you suddenly find the opposition are giving 110, and if you're even like that little bit off it, then those yards and those little extra runs. I mean, I watched some of the Fenerbahce game last week, and folk will say, "Oh, of course you're saying they're rubbish," and guy that comes into touch quite a lot, Abby, big Rangers fan, and saw him the morning after, and that's the first thing he says, like, "Oh, of course you're going to say they're rubbish," and I was like, but they weren't on it. They weren't like, of course they've got good players, but you look at the way that Rangers scored that first goal, the defence was absolutely terrible. It was horrendous. Like the dithering about with the ball on the edge of the box, you're like, why have none of them cleared it? And it just shows you, like, they're obviously better players than Rangers players. There's no two ways about that. Some of them might be a bit long in the tooth now in terms of their age, in terms of Dzeko and whatnot, but I don't think they were at it, and I think they maybe took it lightly, and then they've got this like rabid dog of a Rangers team that are kind of, all they got really is to just give everything to the game, because they've been probably not as skillful as them. So that's why we need to be completely at it as well, and not think about the difference in points in the table and everything else. It's like go into that game thinking that they're a point behind us.
Yeah, absolutely. And
with that attitude, then you might get your 5-0, Liam. But I don't know. I can't say what's going to happen.
Well, it always takes me back to Martin O'Neill's first season when we won the treble, and we had that the first game at Celtic Park against Rangers in the famous 6-2 game. Mm-hmm. But then the very next game at Ibrox, we get spanked. I think it was 5-1, and it was largely the same. Yeah,
dark day. I can't remember if we got a red card in that game or not.
We did. I'm trying to remember who it was that got sent off. I think it was Alan Thompson. Yeah, I think he gets sent off.
That was the game where he went head to head with Lovenkrands, and then Lovenkrands went over.
I think it might have been. Yeah, I'm trying to remember back. I mean, I'm going to be brutally honest. I tried to use that game in my memory.
25 years ago.
Yeah, I know, but it always takes me back, because that team, you just saw as being almost unbeatable at that time. And look, we didn't win every game, but we had a 100% record for a good part of that season. But then we came up against Rangers at Ibrox, after having absolutely demolished them at Paradise. And then, of course, it just shows you that, combination of circumstances. And I think there was also a case of being off it, and we lost 5-1. Now, what was great is we went on, for the rest of that season. I think we trounced them every single game, including in the Cup, with Henrik, famously getting, I think, his 50th goal at Ibrox. In that season.
That was the last league game. That was 3-0. We both scored 2 and Henrik scored the 3rd. Maloney was just off the bench and he followed it in, and you see him, Maloney, celebrating, watching it going in, because he's. But that was right in front of me. That goal was one of my favourite moments ever in football.
Fantastic! Yeah,
seeing Larson do that was just
I've got a story about that, if you'll humour me for a minute or two.
Yeah, go for it.
So, as I was saying before, my dad and I used to do a staffing agency with the football contracts. We also had the contract at Ibrox for a while, right? And the way things worked out that day, one of Rangers' own staff hadn't turned up. So they asked my dad, "Can you look after this corporate hospitality box?" Because my dad was a chef, used to have his own restaurant. He knows the catering trade inside out. He's like, "I no bother." So my dad's looking after this group of like 10 corporate blue noses, right? And he's like doing his host, whatever, half time, getting them drinks, whatever, sends them out. And my dad walks out onto the club deck, and he's just in time to see Larson round the keeper and stick the ball in the net for the 3rd goal, right? And he's got 3-0 and Lubo first goal on his fixed odds coupon, right? So my dad, and I can say this now because he's retired and the company that employed him doesn't exist anymore. He walked back into the box, poured himself a pint of Rangers champagne, and he went, "God bless the Rangers." Downed it.
Brilliant.
Fantastic. And this is what I talk about. We're not just looking forward to the game. We're thinking back over some of these classic matches.
You remember? Have you ever lip read Henrik Larsson at the end of that game? he walks up to and it might be Lambert, might be Lennon, I'm not sure, but he walks up to somebody and as he's high-fiving them, he goes, if you let me read him, he says, about time, because that was the first time he'd ever won at Ibrox, and he'd been there.
Of course.
He'd been there for 4 years at that point.
4 years, yeah, excepting obviously the season with a broken leg, but yeah, that's
it was like about time, and that was the first time that I'd ever seen us win at Ibrox as well. I'd never seen that happen before.
Very rare. That's why I always look back at that season just thinking it was such a milestone season, because it really kick-started, I think, the period of dominance that we started to have over Rangers. And I appreciate it was a bit of to and fro for a time, but then, that was where I think you really saw the tables turning. I think the foundations were set in '98, and I think actually maybe prior to that with Tommy Burns in his last season, I think, the way we were playing, albeit we weren't quite getting the results, Vim and Murdo coming in, and obviously Henrik joining the club in particular, but turning it around in '98 and stopping the 10, and then with a couple of barren years, obviously culminating with the John Barnes era. But then Martin O'Neill comes in, and the landscape just changed. The landscape just changed, and I think that, as you say, 25 years ago, and now we're going into a game. This is probably, and again, without being cocky, without sounding arrogant or entitled, this is probably as confident as I felt going into a game against Rangers, with the squad and the team that we've got, with the manager that we've got, and just the way we're playing. Even though we've had that period of domination, this feels the closest to that kind of Martin O'Neill team. Just talking about something we mentioned earlier about physical. A few people were talking about in the comments the physicality of Rangers, how some of the players were bossed. I think now, Liam, when you look at our back line, and you look at obviously the addition of Jeff Schlupp, you've got AJ, playing, pretty well, taking his game to another level this season. Carter Vickers and Austin Trusty have just been called up by the international team, actually, by the USA. I think it's Pochettino that's now managing there.
Yeah.
So they've been called up, which is great to see. We shout out for Luke McCowan, who didn't get called up to the Scotland squad. I would say that seems harsh, but at the same time, I think he'll get his opportunity. Certainly, doing very well. But going back to the defence, the one thing we've got in abundance now, particularly with Jeff Schlupp at the back, and you include Casper in this as well, we've got physicality at the back, and we've got the ability to dominate opposition forwards at the back. We really need to show that against Rangers, because there has been a tendency when we've played Rangers where we can be a wee bit bullied physically with some players. They're not shy at going in. A few hard tackles. We saw Kuhn getting injured. What are you expecting to see for the back line? Do you think Schlupp will start over Taylor for the opener? But how would you see the game going?
I definitely think Schlupp starts, and the physical aspect is one of the main reasons why I would say yes. He just looks much more of a commanding presence and much more of a threat going forward as well than. And look, I'm not one to jump on the let's slag Greg Taylor bandwagon, right?
Not.
Guy's laid it on the line for Celtic the whole time he's been here. If he leaves in the summer, he owes us nothing. All the best to him wherever he goes next. But
absolutely, 100%.
If we're talking about playing our strongest team on form right now, it's Schlupp. And I see a couple of people actually mentioning in the comments that Schlupp might be worth a wee bet for a first goal at the weekend. I think that's a good shout. I'll certainly be having a wee.
He can do it.
He's shown
he can do it. He looks dangerous when he comes forward. He's got good ability, good position, good ability.
Aye. He has played as a striker before, hasn't he, in different roles?
Is there any position he's not played in yet? Because he seems to be all over the park at times.
The annoying thing is his wage is like everyone's saying we'll pick him up for nothing in the summer, but he's not going to come and play for 10, 15 grand a week when he's on 60, is he?
He's going to be at the top level of our tier if we're lucky enough to get him. I think you're talking about, and from what I understand, without being able to confirm it, our top tier for our top players, which would include your Callum McGregors and probably your Jotas now, would be around about the 30 grand mark. Now, I believe there's a rumour that Schlupp is on around about 60, maybe 62 at the moment. So I think the view is that if we're not having to pay a transfer fee, because he is going to be a free agent in the summer, which obviously doesn't guarantee anything, because then he's going to, if he continues performing well between now and then, he's going to have a fair few suitors and potentially those with more financial clout than we've got. So I guess the question is going to be, can we entice them to come and play Champions League football again, potentially, assuming we get through the playoff? And can we guarantee, with Kieran Tierney coming in, can we guarantee Schlupp enough meaningful football that he's able to prolong his career and make the most of it? On top of having that financial package, as you've said, can we put him onto that top end of the pay scale? So yeah, it's definitely question marks there. Would you take him, JP, though, if we could get a deal done?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think there's any question that would do well to get a better backup left back. I mean, he's clearly obviously going to be that, but I think he would probably be okay with that at his stage in his career, and maybe he would see it as a challenge to try and even keep Tierney out or push Tierney into the left centre back position while he plays out wide. Or I don't think he would just immediately take it off the table and dismiss it. So we don't know what his bank balance looks like right now. It might be very, very healthy. In fact, I would say there's a high chance it's very, very healthy. Unless he's been unless he's been living the high life at every opportunity. But it doesn't strike me as that type of guy. So I would very much be into it. And speaking of Champions League, it should be worth pointing out that Bayern Munich are in the quarterfinals. Aston Villa are in the quarterfinals. Borussia Dortmund are in the quarterfinals. And what do all those three teams have in common? There you go.
Yeah,
Thanks.
Jungle Line was in there.
Well, you read my mind because I thought it had to be mentioned. There was so much scorn poured over our Champions League opposition that there you go. The three teams that beat us are in the quarterfinals, and now that I was going to say now Real Madrid are out. They're not out. They're through. I watched that penalty shootout last night. Felt for Atletico Madrid, even though they scudded us 6-0. I felt for them like that. That was a horrible way to go out with that. The double tap on the penalty. I've never seen that before.
I know.
And it just immediately gets ruled out. You don't even get a chance to retake it. Like, that's so harsh. Like, can you imagine that happened to us in that same situation? Imagine me going to Bayern Munich and taking them to penalties, and then that happened to one of our players.
It'd be up there with Juventus levels of injustice. Really, I would have felt if that had happened. It was just horrible.
Martin O'Neill would self-combust, I think, if that happened.
Absolutely. No, I mean, sympathy certainly with Atletico Madrid. Not so much for their manager, to be honest. But yeah, sympathy with the team. I want to bring up a few more of the comments there, and certainly a few of them in line with what you guys are saying. Jay Conley, Jay Larkin, welcome to the channel. Afternoon all. The closer the game gets, the more I think he'll start with Ida. Interesting. He used to talk about finishing a game strongly and may want Jota, Dyson, Kuhn from the hour mark. It's a fair point. I think there is, it could go either way. I think you get the benefit of starting strongly, or you get the benefit of finishing strongly. Either way, as we saw in the last match there, Ida can come in late in a game and make an impact, which is a great option for the manager to have. I want to bring this up from Tony Ratton. Jinky, what a legend. And yeah, I think this is in relation, guys, to the fact it's 19 years to the day since Jimmy Jinky Johnson passed away. Not a player that I was privileged enough to see in his prime, but footage, stories told by ex-players, family members, etc. Obviously voted, the greatest ever Celtic player. For me, I would look at Henrik Larsson and give him that accolade based on what I saw. But when you listen to the way people talk about Jinky and what he achieved, and even post his career, how he interacted with some of the other players. A great story that Joe Miller tells. If you ever get the chance to listen to Joe, he talks about how Jinky, who was probably about in his 40s at this point, I'm not sure, but when Joe was coming through, and just having this appetite for football to the extent where he kind of took Joe under his wing and was trying to, coach him. But as Joe tells it, every time he would try and coach Joe, it would involve Jinky basically hogging the ball for 50 minutes and then giving Joe 10 minutes with the ball. So this was how he'd still had such an appetite and affinity for football. So yeah, some brilliant stories and certainly gone, but absolutely never forgotten.
I can second that appetite for football, Pat. My mate Nodge is from Uddingston, and he was in the park as a wee boy with a Celtic top on, and a guy asked him for a pass of the ball, and he looked over and it was Jinky. And then he ended up like a pass back and forward with him that was only like a minute or two, but I mean, I'm pretty sure Nodge will dine out on that for a long, long time. The fact he had like a 1-2 with Jinky, just because he obviously spotted the Celtic top, and that moment wouldn't have happened. See, when I was a wee guy, I wasn't allowed to wear a Celtic top in the park because for fear of getting attacked. My mum
certain reprisals, yeah.
I grew up in Bathgate, so Bathgate was a different place in the late 80s, early 90s.
No, I was the same. I can't remember. I think I was allowed to wear it when we were on holiday. I don't think I was allowed to wear it too often when I was at home. But yeah, certainly all our best wishes go to Agnes, Jinky's widow, and obviously all the friends and family of Jinky Johnson. So yeah, rest in peace, Jinky. We'll continue on with some of the comments. Actually, some comments about Jinky coming in. So J. Colin J. Larkin comes back in. Jinky, my first memory as such is when we were on the bus to Bellshill to see my gran and granddad, my brother, the oldest of 6 of us. Well, would point out the window, there's Jimmy Johnson's house, like a bit of Hollywood and Bellshill. There you go. Sean Fairley comes in. It says, my dad always has the biggest smile whenever you ask him what was it like watching Jinky. Yeah, I kind of wonder if my own kids are going to say that when they ask, what was it like watching, Henrik Larsson, Henrik Larsson, Sutton, Hartson, Lugo, etc. Underwater Cabbage Salesman, welcome to the channel. Hail to you as well, sir. Walter, or these are the kind of comments that you get you banned deliberately by me for a change. Hail from a very hot Belgic in Turkey. I hope you're having a great time, sir. I'm assuming it's on holiday. And Urban Culture comes in. Blessed to have seen Jinky play. Yeah, it's probably the only good side of being as young as I am, or the bad side of being just that I never got to see Jinky rather. And then last comment here, Magnet67, afternoon Acsom team from sunny Basra. I'm assuming that's a bit apprehensive about Sunday, to be honest. So I'm only going to predict a 7-0 win for the champions. Absolutely, yeah. Don't be too overconfident on that one, guys. There is a couple of things I want to touch on while we've got time. So, with the position we're in as a club at the moment, very well off financially. There's a lot of clubs of similar profile to us, both in the UK and wider Europe. And what they're doing at the moment is they're investing in our stadium now. And I'm not looking for us to go 2 billion Man United style developments. But as much as we're relying on the club to improve the on-field product, by backing the manager, investing in players, maybe getting more players in of Arne Engels, quality. There's also the element of trying to improve the infrastructure. And what became apparent to me is with all the kind of involvement of international sports conglomerates, etc., there's a big push to make football more akin to a kind of fan spectacle. Now, I was fortunate enough a few years ago to go to Canada and go and see the Toronto Blue Jays play in their stadium. And as much as I'm not really a massive baseball fan, certainly nowhere near football, what I did enjoy was the overall fan spectacle. Because even when the on-field action wasn't taking place, and baseball is very stop-start, there was a lot to keep you engaged as a fan. Really comfortable seating. You take a drink in, a lot of entertainment, a lot of fan, interaction, that kind of thing. And I think that there's an appetite for football to go a similar way. I don't think we need to go to that level, but there's certainly an appetite to try and improve the fan experience on that. Now, JP, you've obviously been going to the matches. Liam, you are going to football out in Japan, etc. How does the product out in Japan compare to, say, what we get in Scotland? And where do you think we can make improvements? Because we've got a great stadium at the moment, but it is, getting long in the tooth a little bit like a few of us. It's, people like Jim Orr, for example, they talk about sometimes, lack of support in terms of the screens and visibility and things like that. How can the board actually go and try and improve us, not just on the park, but actually as a club and a sporting institution?
There needs to be a total change and this isn't just Celtic, this is Scottish football in general. There needs to be a total change in attitude in how fans are approached. Because in Japan, we're not seen as fans, we're seen as customers. And we are paying for a product. And so the clubs have a responsibility to provide the consumer with the best product possible. So it's little things like, going into the stadium. Like, I don't think I've ever seen a police officer at a football match in Japan. because they're just not necessary. Because it's expected that you know exactly where you're supposed to go, you know exactly where your ticket's for. Queuing is orderly, everything is arranged, so there are no points of friction, right? There's nobody demanding to search you. There's nobody, that's the thing. It's the idea is that you're the customer, and it is the duty of the host to serve the customer. And that is the thing. When we are paying 40, 50 quid a ticket, in any other situation, you'd be demanding top class service for that. And it's other little things, like being able to just be able to sit and watch the game and have a beer, right?
Yeah.
And the thing is, people say, "Oh, but there'd be trouble with that and whatever." Now, I'm going off on a wee bit of a tangent here, but bear with me.
No, that's all right.
The thing is, I noticed something. Now, when I had my season ticket for Celtic in the early 2000s, as with a lot of people, it was the idea of go for a few pints before the game, because you're not gonna have a drink during the game, and then go for a few pints after the game. So you end up having 5, 6, 7 pints over the course of an afternoon, but it's compressed into an hour before kickoff, maybe an hour or two after the game, right? Which is not a healthy way to drink. Whereas going to a game in Japan, I drink so much less because there isn't that pressure. It's like I'll have maybe 1 pint before the game. I'll have maybe 1 or 2 during the game, maybe 1 after the game.
Yeah.
And it's like there isn't that same pressure to like drink because you've got to go dry for 90 minutes. It's like just relax and take your time and enjoy it. And
So
also simple things like people, and if you're in your seat, there are people walking up and down the aisles like hawkers that will give you like a drink or a hot dog, whatever, if you want. You don't have to get up and go and wait in a queue for 20 minutes. There's none of this worrying about missing a goal because you're queuing in the concourse for your pie or whatever. It's just so much better organized, and it's not even a numbers game because Yokohama Stadium, where I saw Celtic play back in 2023, that's bigger than Celtic Park. That's like a 75,000. That hosted a World Cup final, a 75,000 capacity stadium, and nobody was waiting for more than 5 minutes for food and drink because it was just coordinated so much better.
So
anyway, sorry.
Do you just go up and get a beer at the same time as getting obviously you're not going to get a Scotch pie in a Japanese stadium, but a snack like at the same time as getting a beer? That's how it works.
Aye. Yep.
Wow.
Aye. It's like if you imagine how like a pie stall works at Celtic Park, right? You've got like your hamburgers, your pie, your pizza, whatever, and then you've got like your Coke, Fanta, whatever, right? It's the same thing, but then there's also another wee bit that's like cans of beer, cans of mixers, so like whiskey, soda, whatever. Mm-hmm. And then there's also these things called Chu-Hai, which is like fruit mixed with sort of a Smirnoff Ice kind of thing. It's like fruit and vodka kind of mixed together. And you just take your pick and you pay for it all together. And there's also different stalls for different types of food. So you can go and get like fried chicken for one bit. You can go and get a hamburger here. You can go and get sushi or noodles if that's what you want. There's all the different varieties of food. There's actually something that's no too far away for a Scotch pie as well.
Wow, fantastic! Yeah,
I think
I was going to say, what's your thoughts, JP? Because
with regards to improvements, I think that the best thing that you can always do is do things like that. Like go send a couple of folk from the club who are whose task there you go, whose task is to go around, maybe not necessarily the world, but certainly Europe and the UK, and just sort of take note of what is working well. It's like when managers are out at work, they usually end up going round training grounds and calling in favours from friends who are in the same world as them, and they'll go and take part in a training session at, I don't know, Spurs or something like that. Like Charlie McGrew, I'm sure, came to Lennoxtown. Obviously that's a fairly more obvious connection, but sometimes your connections can lead you to different countries. And I just think Celtic have got an opportunity, if they were looking at revamping areas of outside the ground or inside the ground, to look at best practice and take notes and come back and present to the club, look, this is what we found, this is what worked well in this club, and they are making X amount of money out of this, and this is how they made use of this part of the ground and what they did outside the ground and everything else. Because at the moment it just feels like we're standing still. And Paul said that a load of times about the outside of Celtic Park, and it could be decorative, it could be money making, there could be a combination of the two. But I just know from the experiences I've had in European football that there's definitely things that we could be doing. There's 100% things that we could be doing that would make money for the club, would enhance the match day experience, and ultimately, I don't know, it would make it more of an event rather than just the football match itself.
Yeah, a few of the comments coming in are supporting that view. So underwater cabbage salesman comes in. The NBA is like that. The constant fan engagement during moments of downtime, keeping people invested in the event. Football could do a lot more on this. I agree with that. Liam Devine comes in to say, give a counterpoint. Say, I'm baffled when people say the stadium is old or whatever. What the fudge? It was built in 1994. It's a genuinely lauded arena around the world. I genuinely don't get that. I would agree in terms of it is, but it's a little bit, if you apply the Old Trafford scenario, you know, the whole theatre of dreams. But because it's been just kind of left in that condition for so long, I mean, you've had players and fans saying, you know, it's time, it needs upgrading, it needs to change a little bit. You know, you can't just rest on your laurels. And I think there is a point of, with football evolving, with stadiums evolving, with the fan experience evolving, I think you've got to move with it to an extent as much as we can. So I kind of agree with what you say, JP. I think there's a lot more we can do. Ian Corbett comes in and says, I've had beers at pubs, concerts and all sports that I've been to, not once caused trouble. It's not hard. I mean, I think that's right. Liam makes a good point. There is a tendency before a match to go and get tanked up before the game, and actually because of that, by the time you get into the game, you're actually in worse condition than you might be if you were drinking under no pressure, as it were. And look, there shouldn't be any pressure to drink. Let's be clear on that. You know, a lot of people don't drink these days. Big focus on health, and everyone should drink responsibly. But I think, you know, that you're not under time pressure to get 2 or 3 pints down because you're not going to get the opportunity during the match. Whereas you might find actually that, you know, obviously individuals will act differently, but I think there'd be a much more relaxed atmosphere, and people would not necessarily be in really bad condition just because they're having 1 or 2 beers during a game. And in fact, there's enough distractions there that you're probably not just drinking for the sake of getting it down you. And Pete McGee comes on me a good point. Last point. Have you seen the NFL fan cams comparing fans to famous faces?
Yeah.
I think we should absolutely have that, but I think we should have that on Sunday if we're 3 or 4 goals up and just put it on the away end and just see what
have like Rangers fan, a baboon's
Rangers fan cam. Yeah, see what that happens. It's just banter, guys. If there's any Rangers fans watching, it's just banter.
Yeah, sorry for any baboons that are watching. I don't mean to make that comparison disrespectfully.
Guys, we're almost at time. That's gone really, really fast, and unfortunately, I do have to get back to work, which is the downside of doing this. However, there's a couple of things that I am mandated by our fearless leader, Paul John Dykes, to cover. So I'm just going to run through these. So a couple of mentions. So happy birthday, first of all, to Chris Sutton, who turned 52 last week. You know, played a big part in that 6-2 game, as we mentioned. You know, who can forget that impact in his first game against Rangers with the opening goal and the last goal. JP, absolutely amazing, and certainly was the first of many. So happy birthday to Chris, and also to one of Jinky's Lisbon Lion teammates, a real stalwart. It's easy for me to say, of the club to this day, and that's John Clark, who turns 84 years young today. So many hoopy returns to both. Last up, we have to give a plug to our Acsom fan zone, which is taking place at Barras Art and Design on Sunday. I think the doors open at around 11 o'clock, and I believe we're already about 300 strong. There's about 50 seats left. It is free entry, but it's always good to book via the bad website, and the link is under the video. That guarantees you a seat, and you do get a free pie on entry, which has got the gym or seal of approval. So it must be good. you'll get a chance to meet Paul John and a few of the Acsom boys who are turning up, but you're also going to be joined by Bobby Petta, another player notable from that 6-2 game where he absolutely terrorised the Rangers defence, if I remember. You know, someone that really thrived under Martin O'Neill, a very notable player. And
now a DJ, by the way.
Now a DJ, absolutely. I had the pleasure of actually picking Bobby Pitt up and dropping him off when we did This Is Acsom. A really fascinating guy, really good listen, and actually really, when you listen to him talk, you see why he gets involved in coaching as well, because he's got a real good insight into particularly how wingers play, and certainly something he said stuck with me, which was you want wingers to be brave. You want wingers to be the bravest players on the park in terms of going and taking players on. Just talking about Martin O'Neill, Martin O'Neill will be joining Acsom on the 27th of March. We have just 10 tickets remaining for that one, so that's selling out very, very quickly. Again, the link is under the video, so do check that out. Honestly, one of the best guests. JP, I think you were at you might have been at the last one we did with Martin O'Neill. I remember seeing you there. Brilliant stories. He's a real showman when it comes to speaking and talking about his time there, and a brilliant listen. And he's every bit as impressive. Even I think he's 72, 73, and it doesn't look as though he's aged a day since he was
unbelievable. He's just a lot of guy.
So anyway, listen, guys. Absolute pleasure being on with both of you. Thanks very much for that. And of course, thank you to everyone joining us on a Celtic State of Mind. We're over 1,300 strong today on a Thursday. We look forward to the game on Sunday. This has been a Celtic State of Mind. Hail, hail.
Cheers.
Hail, hail.